G'day! In this video we're going to make a classic viral utility software with Tkinter and Python. You can try this one out on your friends and family and maybe your co-workers. See what they think. Let's get into it. So we're going to write some code straight away, so let's go. Well, first of all, we'll import tkinter as tk, and we'll also get ttk. So from tkinter import ttk, and we're also going to import something called message box, which we're going to use to show messages in a pop-up window. And we want to make it a bit random, so we'll go from random import randint, so we can make some random numbers. Okay, so we'll create a class, and we may as well call it something like pay rise, and we'll extend the ttk frame. In other words, the class is going to be a frame. We'll create an init function, which is going to be called when the frame is first created. And we'll only give it one parameter, which is going to be the master for this frame. And we'll call the self.master to store that master value. So that's going to be the tkinter object that's the parent of this frame. And then we'll call the superclass to make it into an actual frame. And self.master in between the brackets there. Okay. Now we'll leave it at that for the moment, but let's create some more functions. We'll fill them in a second. So we'll do configure UI. That's where we're going to do any UI configuration. And for the moment, we'll just put pass in there so we can create the next function. And we'll call this one create interface. That's where we're going to set up our widgets. And the next one we'll call message. That's where we're just going to display a message back to the person using the form. And the last one we'll call move. And you'll see what that one's for later. And we'll just put a pass in there as well. Pass is just so we can, we've got the pass in this one too. Pass is just so we don't have to worry about it for the moment. And our code will still run. So down the bottom, we just need to put our normal stuff for the moment. So our idiom to test the code, if underscore underscore name underscore underscore double equals quotes double underscore main double underscore. So when the script runs, it'll say it's a script, it'll run the code. So root equals tk dot, whoops, capital TK. There we go. And well, let's set a couple of parameters for the window. So we'll go root dot title, give it a title. We'll say need a pay rise. That'll be the title of our window, and we'll give it a size. So we'll go root dot geometry, and we'll put that in a string. We'll say 500 x 500. So it's going to be a square window, 500 pixels in size. And then we'll do root dot main loop for now. Okay, let's just make sure that all that works. So we'll just run it. And there's our window. Got title 500 by 500. Looks good. Too easy. All right, so let's get started filling out these functions and stuff. So first of all, we want to make sure that when our frame's created, when the init function runs, it calls this function and this function. So we'll just add them into the init function. So we'll go self.configure UI with brackets on the end, parentheses on the end, and self.create interface. Okay, so now those two functions will run when the frame is created. So that guarantees they're going to run. That looks good. Okay, now in the configure UI one, we're going to use a grid to lay out this frame. So we may as well configure the grid in here. So we'll go self.column configure. This is going to make the columns expand and the rows expand how we want them to. So we'll do column 0 and we'll give it a weight of 1. And then we'll copy and paste that line again. And this time we'll do, instead of column 0, we'll do column 1. So we're only going to have 2 columns and we want them to expand evenly. So they're the same width basically. And then we'll do the same for rows, 2 rows as well. Row configure 0, weight equals 1. And copy and paste again if you want. Or if you're in VS Code, you can always do Shift Alt down arrow and that'll just automatically copy the line. Saves you a little bit of time. There we go. So now we've configured our grid interface for the frame. And while we're in here, let's also use a style. We use a style to style our widgets because we're using TTK widgets. We can use a style. So we'll do self.style equals ttk.style. There it is. And we'll tell it belongs to the frame. That's its master. And then we're going to change some of the widgets default. So we'll change the labels and the buttons. We'll just make the fonts a bit bigger, I think. So let's do that. So for all labels and all buttons. So to do that for all labels first, we'll go self.style.configure. Now, the label style by default is called T label with a capital T and a capital first L, T label. So that's going to configure all labels. And we'll do font equals, and then we'll put it in brackets, quotes, and we'll say sans serif. So we use a sans serif font, and we'll make them 24 points. And we may as well just do a copy and paste, or Shift Alt K. Except this time we're not going to do the T label style, we're going to do the T button style with a capital B for button. And we'll just make the buttons a little bit smaller. We'll make them 14. There we go. So those 2 lines are going to configure the font size for all labels and all buttons that we use by default. That'll do. Okay, that's enough for our configure UI. Let's create our interface next. So let's just add, what do we need? We need 1 label and 2 buttons. So let's add the label first. So we'll go self.heading. We'll call this the heading because it's going to be the only text on the frame that we see. So we'll go ttk.label and we'll just space it out a bit. So the master is going to be the frame, so that's self. Get rid of that tooltip. Okay, self is going to be the first thing. Then we'll say text equals. Now this is what the person's going to see on the window. So this is going to be a question, as if it's a survey. So we'll say, do you want a pay rise? Simple yes or no question is what we're asking them. And we'll make it appear in the center of the cell that it's going to sit in. So we'll go anchor tk.center. Okay. And that's enough for our label, but let's put it in the grid. So we're going to go self.heading for the label.grid. And it's going to be in row 0, row equals 0, and column equals 0. And we want to span it across the 2 columns. So we'll go column span, and it's 2, so it's going to go across from column 0 to column 2. It's going to cover both of them. And do we need anything else? Oh yeah, we'll spread it out. We'll make it fill up the whole 2 columns. So we'll go sticky equals tk.nsew. That'll make it fill up all the space that it's got. Use all that space. Okay, our label's done. We can even check it. Let's see if it runs. Should it run? Yeah, probably run. Let's see. Yep, it runs, but we haven't shown it up here yet. So we'll need to add our frame in. We may as well do that now. So let's go back down to our bottom. We just need to add our frame. We haven't used our class yet. So let's add that in. So we'll go down here and we'll go root.frame equals, and we called it pay rise. So just like that. And then we will, we have to tell it that root is the master. So we go root in between the brackets. And then we'll just pack it. Root.frame.pack. And we may as well fill up the whole window. So fill equals tk.both and expand equals 1 or true, one of those. There we go. Let's see if it shows now. See if our label shows now. And there we go. Do you want a pay rise? Yeah, that's a pretty good size font. If we wanted to change the size font, we could just go up and change that style for the T label up there to a bigger font. All right. That looks good. Okay, so we're going to get two buttons displaying down here now. So we need a yes and a no button because we just want someone to click a yes or a no. All right, so let's go back to our interface. Let's add the yes button. So we'll say self.yes equals ttk.button. And we don't need to do too much for this. So we'll just put self as the master, the frame's the master, the frame class. And what else do we need? Oh, a little bit of text. So we need to put yes on there, don't we? Yes. We're not worrying about a command or anything like a function to run when you click it, because you'll see that won't be needed. And we better put it in the grid. So we'll do self.yes.grid. And this one wants to be in row 1. And it's column 0. And that'll do. Okay, but we need one more thing. We are going to use an event. And the event we're going to use is whenever the user gets the mouse over the top of the button. And that's called the enter event. That's the event that fires off when a user hovers the mouse over the top of a button. In other like web applications or that kind of stuff, you might call it on hover. It's the same kind of thing. So we better bind that event to this move function. We're going to run the move function whenever the user gets the mouse over the top of the button. So let's do self.yes.bind, and the event we're going to bind to is the enter event. So it's quotes and then a arrow and then enter with a capital E and then another arrow wrapped in arrows. So, and the event the function we want to run when the user gets the mouse on top of the button is the not move, self.move. That's the function we want to run. This one down here, which we'll fill in a minute. Okay. Well, actually, for the moment, let's just do this. We'll print a message in that one, mouse on top. There we go. We'll print a message that says mouse on top every time if this event runs. Okay. We've got a grid, got that. Let's see if that runs. We got a button? Yeah, we got a button. Now, when we hover over the button in the terminal window down there, we should see the message appear. No. Oh, what did we forget to do? It takes 2 arguments. It's an event. We've giving it an event. So down in here in our move function, we need to put comma and we'll just put event there. That's going to be the second argument. We're not going to use it, but that's going to be the argument. Okay, let's check again. Now it should work. There we go, mouse on top, mouse on top, mouse on top. So every time we go over it, it prints out the message. Perfect, that'll do for now. Let's add our no button. So we just need the copy and paste these two, I think. Copy and paste. Change here. So we just need to change all the yeses to nos and change the grid. So this is going to go in column 1. This is going to be a no. And another no. And a no. And let's check to see if our no button appears. Yeah, it does. Perfect. So we've got a yes and we've got a no. Okay, let's make the no button do something. So the no button, when you click on the no button, it's actually going to run this message command. So let's go back to the no button and give it the command equals self.message. There we go. So when you click the no button, this function is going to run. So what's this function going to do? Well, this function is going to use the message box. And it's going to show, that message box is going to show a message. So let's use that. So we'll go message box dot, and we've got these ones that look like cubes. They're the ones we can call. We're going to use this one, show info. So you can have all these different kinds of message boxes. They can ask yes, no questions or cancel okay questions, etc. Or you can show information like an error message, info, or warning. We're going to use info. So let's use show info. And it only really takes 2 arguments, a title and a message. So for the title, let's give it good choice. And for the message, let's say you are right there. You are right. That'll do, just that. Okay, and then when they click no, we're also going to close the window. So we're going to quit the application. So we'll do self.quit. Ooh, can't type. There we go. Self.quit. So they'll show the message, then when they click the OK button on the message, it'll quit. Let's see if it works. So run it. Do you want a pay rise? That still works. And then when they click no, you get a message. Good choice, you're right. And the application quits. Perfect. So that works. So all we've got left to do is finish this move function. I think that'd just about do us. And then we'll have our utility finished. Now the move function uses a little bit of math because we're going to do the following. What's going to happen is, I'm going to spoil it a bit, but we'll tell you what's going on so you understand the code. When the user hovers over the yes button, what's going to happen is the yes button is suddenly going to disappear from here and randomly appear somewhere else on the screen. So in other words, they have to chase it around the screen trying to click it. And the idea is that they'll never be able to click yes, so they'll have to click no. If you're really lucky, you'll get it so the yes button appears over the top of the no button, and then they'll try and click it, and they'll click the no button, and they'll see that message instead. So what we're trying to do is make the yes button move randomly around the screen. So we need to know some of the measurements, the size of the button, the size of the screen. We need to calculate where the button can and can't go. So we have to do a little bit of math. It's not hard math, it's just a bit of multiplication and pluses and minuses and stuff, but it takes a few variables to sort it out. We'll just do it in a kind of simple fashion, not too complicated. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to know the maximum width that our button can go on. So when you use the place manager, which is what we're going to use, it just puts the top left corner of the button at an actual coordinate, XY coordinate. So 0, 0 is the top left of the frame, and 500, 500 would be the bottom right of the frame. But it puts the top left of the button at the bottom right of the frame, and that would mean that we wouldn't be able to see it because all the button would be outside the frame. So we have to make sure that we can still see the button. So the first thing we need to know is the maximum width of our window, which is going to be the frame's width minus the width of the button, because we don't want the button going outside the frame. So let's create a function, or not a function, a variable called maxW, the maximum width. And we're going to use some of the ways to find out the measurements of our objects. So we'll do, the frame is the self object, the window, the class, I should say. So we do self winfo width. That's going to tell us the width of the frame. And we're going to minus, so we're going to subtract the width of the button because we don't want it to go all the way out the full width of the frame. We want it to go no more than the full width of the frame minus the button's width, so we can still see it. So that's going to be self.yes.winfo width again. So this one will give us the frame's width, self.winfo width, and this one gives us the button's width because we've got the yes in there to say it's for the button. All right, now we need the same thing, but we need for the height. So we need max height equals, same thing, but we do self.winfo, winfo height. Don't forget the parentheses, minus self.yes winfo height. There we go. So we've got the maximum width and height where the button can be placed so that it'll still show on the frame. Okay, that's the first thing we need to do. Now, when we call this function, we want to know where the button actually is currently at because it's going to move around the screen. So we want to know its current location. So we can get an X and Y coordinate for our button. That tells us where the top left of the button is. So let's store those. So we'll say button X is currently at self.w, yes, that's the button, winfo, and then this time we're going to use the X function. That's going to tell us the X coordinate of the button, and we need the Y coordinate. self.yes.winfo y. Whoops. There we go. So that gives us the current x and y. And then we're just going to store them because they're going to change. So that's the current ones. So let's just store those ones in new variables. So we're going to say this is going to be the next x and y coordinate that we're going to give it. So, i.e. the new one. So we'll say pos, the new pos x, and the new pos y, when we first create them, are going to be equal to button, the current button x, and the current position y, so button y. So the new ones, when we first create them, are going to be equal to the current ones, and then we're going to change them. So now we have to change them, and we want to change them randomly. So we're trying to create a random x and y coordinate. But what we don't want is we don't want the button to give us a random number that's too close or on top of where it's already sitting, because then it's not going to move and it'll just appear in the same spot. So we want to move it away from where it already is. So we're going to use this code. So we're going to say while pos x, so that's the current position, in range, and what we're doing now is we're saying button x, that's where it currently is, minus the width of the button, so minus self.yes.winfo width. Okay, so that's the width of the button in brackets. So that's one thing, part of our range, and then the other function, part of our range function, is the same thing, but we're going to add the button width. So we're going to say button x plus self.yes.winfo width. Okay, so effectively what we're trying to do is we're trying to say while the position is between the minimum and maximum sizes of the current button, and if it's between those sizes, we want to create a new random size, or a new random x position, I should say. So now we're going to set pos x equals rand int, a random one. So it's between 1 and the maximum size of the window that we created up here. So we don't want it going outside the maximum size of the window. There we go, done that. And what have we got left to do? So that'll do the x coordinate. All right. Okay. Yep. And we need to do the y coordinate as well, don't we? So we'll do a quick, I don't know if copy and paste is the best bet here, but we'll try it. So we've got to change all the pos x's to pos y's. And we've got to change the button x and to button y's. And we need to have, this one's going to be max height, so max h. There we go. So that should now give us, oh, that's why I've got pox x. We need pos there. There we go, that's better. All right, so in other words, we initially set the current positions to where the button actually is, but now we're going to change those positions to new ones, so long as it's not already where the button is displaying. We're going to move the button away from where it currently is. All right, so all we need to do now is actually move the button. So we go self.yes.place, and we use pos x and pos y. So we go x equals pos x, the new position x, and y equals pos y. All right, I think that's enough for us. Let's see. I think that'll do it. Let's run the code, see if it works. We don't need to add anything down there, I don't think. All right, let's run it. No errors, that's good. So that should work. What happens when I go over the yes button? Oh, it moved. Nice. What happens when I go over it again? Oh, it moved again. And again, and again, and again. Oh yeah, it's working. All right, seems to be going everywhere at random and it's staying on the screen. Now there is one more thing. Ah, there we go. That little thing that's happening there where the yes button is under the no button. We want to get rid of that. We want to make it appear on top. So how do we do that? Well, why is it under the no button? Well, that's simply because we created the yes button first. We created the yes button and then we created the no button. So the no button goes on top of the yes button. So how do we get around that? Well, we just have to we'll go back up to our create interface function and we just have to put in one more line of code. So we'll go self.yes.tkraise. And that's going to bring that button all the way to the top. So it will sit on top of the no button. Okay, and let's try again. Might take a while before it goes over the top of the no button, but we might be able to see it when it does. It's working pretty well. So the idea is that you can't get onto the yes button. I think that one's over the top of it there now, but it's hard to see. It wasn't it? Looks like it's working anyway. So the only option really in the end is to click no. And you've done it. Well, there we go. We did it once. So if you're lucky, you'll get the yes button appearing over the top of the no button, and then someone will click and they'll get the message. Which you might want to change because they might have think they clicked the yes button then, because that message could work for either of the buttons if you clicked them. So you might want to change this message to something that's a bit more appropriate for clicking the no button. There you go. That's our app. So hopefully you enjoyed that video and that you were able to get the code running. I'll see you in the next one.